Okay, so this is the first time I've done a movie review in this format using this camera, so we're just going to see how it goes. So this evening I took my family to see Justice League, and so here are my thoughts on the movie so far. First of all, I want to say it was actually a fun movie, and I think this film delivered. I think it was more lighthearted than any previous DC Extended Universe film, and despite a lot of the dark scenes, there were a lot of moments that were relatively entertaining and not brooding, and some of them were actually pretty funny. The movie had a lot of good music throughout, especially when used with Aquaman in some of his scenes. Also, this movie was clearly aimed at kids and teens who are susceptible to this kind of superhero movie. And my kids actually enjoyed this movie more than I did. You know, I do feel it's not like Star Wars in a sense that it doesn't build layers and layers with a lot of deep and interesting characters that can also appeal to adults, you know, which is why the kids would get it more. But it's really about a few stereotypical and iconic characters with essentially everyone else as background. With that said, I'm going to talk about some of the negative points. Everything seemed shoveled together. Some of the dialogue was really bad, especially in the beginning. Too many scenes were disjointed, and it didn't really make sense on how they came together. Also, the dynamics between the characters only existed between the superheroes, which consisted of roughly 80% of all the dialogue in the film. And these conversations are at a lower evolutionary level than what we're used to seeing in the Marvel Avenger-based movies. Honestly, cartoon episodes of Justice League Unlimited from nearly 20 years ago had more sophisticated story material and a better feel of ongoing backstory in the Timverse than what we see here in this movie. But with that said, it was still not bad to watch. But the way they reached conclusions and get from point A to B were intellectually lacking, especially the way they brought back Superman, which appeared to be more like magic than any form of technology sufficiently advanced to appear like magic. Now let's talk about the really bad facial CGI for Superman. And no, I don't buy the mustache excuse because his entire face and body were completely fabricated in too many noticeable scenes. I only heard of that mustache business in the days leading up to seeing the movie, but that didn't really prepare me for just how bad his facial CGI was. I think there were some scenes where he wasn't there at all, so they reshot it with someone else and then had him put his voice over it, and they essentially reassembled his face through CGI. And speaking of bad CGI, Steppenwolf had even more bad facial CGI, like throughout. Couldn't they get a legitimate actor's face for some of the scenes? But more to the point, this is the least consequential villain of any superhero movie since Superman Returns. Steppenwolf is great in action scenes, but that's not a substitute for a real character. And overall, a lot of bad, really bad special effects were used to mask other bad special effects. And a lot of the battles look like opening cinematics of a video game. Also, the plot point of making worlds essentially a hell on earth seems a little shallow to me. It's the lowest form of the take over the world plot dynamic. It's also not remaking it in a better image or using its resources or having someone rule it. It's literally just destroy everything and make the planet unusable. The character I liked least was the Flash. This Barry Allen seemed the least like the one that we've seen in the comics. Not even like Wally West that replaced him after Crisis on Infinite Earths. He was really skittish and dumb. The good news is Cyborg was largely the way he was portrayed in the comics for the first few years that he appeared. And while Aquaman is different than the iconic version you might have seen in the Super Friends, this one is a more gritty version similar to what we've seen in the comics in the last few decades. They really tried making Aquaman interesting and valuable, and I think they did a good job here. One thing I noticed that there are too many times in the movie where skinheads and white conservative stereotypes were used as just villain fodder. And one of the scenes where the Flash and the Cyborg are digging up Clark's grave, and there's this joke of the Flash trying to fist bump with Cyborg. It's basically spelling out the joke, even explicitly mentioning racial dynamics. That's just spoon feeding, and I thought was too low a level for even this type of superhero movie. The best scenes were actually when Superman fought the Justice League or anyone else. Every moment of him fighting something was literally the greatest moment in the film, one after the other. And the best interactions were that of Flash versus Superman anytime that occurred in the movie or in the post-credits. But there was a lot of material that could have been used in the advent of Superman's return, and what we ended up with is just an altered brief fight, and then a scene on the farm with a little dialogue between Clark, Lois, and Ma Kent, and that was really it. They had a lot of potential here for bringing in other characters here. Lastly, while it's great we're going to see the supervillains getting a league of their own in a future film, unfortunately they'll be led by the worst Lex Luthor to ever grace any live screen whatsoever. Nervous tics and erratic speech patterns included. Bottom line is, I thought the length of the movie was perfect, so no complaints about it being too long or too short, but I would rate this lower than most Marvel movies, with a villain that would have given Malachi a run in the second Thor film. And really, the low quality CGI was used too often for my taste. So anyways, that's going to do it for this movie review. Hope you enjoyed the movie, at least as much as I did. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.